Well, normally I try to memorize the music, but you know, since I didn't have a lot of time prior to the first rehearsal, I didn't have time to memorize it because there's some quite many details in Luca's music. You know, changes tonalities and then different chords and then different interludes and different passages. So I didn't have time to memorize it. But since I played on the record, I kind of remember, I hear the melodies and I hear the harmony. So basically, I'm putting the charts in front of me more as a roadmap, and then sometimes I say, oh, where are we going the next section? And I'll look and, okay, I see. It's more a roadmap to refresh my memory. But I'm very close to play it by heart. Yeah, part of it is right. Part of it is right. The idea of having my bass like this, because I played a lot of upright bass, and I got used to this movement instead of this movement. And then also, having the bass like that, I never bend my wrists, you know, either here or here. So it's a lot more natural position for me. And then, as you mentioned, it also allowed me to put my neck towards the chart and then see both the left hand position and the chart. But you know what? Most of the time I'm not looking at the neck because I know my tuning is from position from one figure to another. A half tone, a semitone, a minor third, or a major third. So my ear corrects the finger right away. Of course, sometimes if I have a long stretch, change position for a wider interval, then I take a look. You know. So this is basically the idea of the way I position the bass, the way I hold it. Yeah, all of it is correct. On a 4-string, if you hit the E string, your left hand mute the 3 top strings. The 3 top strings are mainly most of the time muted by your left hand. The problem is when you go up, you play A string, then you land on the E string, it mutes the E string. And normally when you play the D string, the A string is open, and the E string would be open too, but normally bass players, they put their thumb on the E string. So that mutes the 3 strings. But if you play on the G string, then you're in trouble because the A string will be open. And then open string, you want to avoid it because if a string starts vibrating when you play another note, it creates, you know, a noise. And it gets worse with the 6-string bass because, you know, when you play, you know, you have your low B string and then you have 3 string that eventually will be open. So when I first started playing 6-string bass, I figured right away that I had to find a solution for that. Some guys mute, if they play with 2 fingers, they mute the strings with these 2 fingers. I was not comfortable doing that because I wanted to play with 3 fingers. My pinky was too short. So I figured right away that if I always move my thumb, my position is always the same. See? It's just this that moves. It took me a while to figure it out, to have the thumb going up and down and being comfortable and consistent. And then now I'm very comfortable. I don't think about it anymore. It's just natural. And then I mute the string with my thumb, and my thumb sits on the string. And then when I play on the low B string, I have a thumb rest below below the B string at the same distance from string to another. So it's always
okay.
Yeah, I did many different exercises for sure. Practicing intervals and get used to hear it. Hear the intervals in your head before you play. You know, a semitone, a whole tone, all the intervals within an octaves. And then hear the intervals of a ninth and tenth and all that. Practicing scales very, very slowly. And also, when we first started to have access to computers and sequencers, I would record anything I would practice. Midi, like a scale, arpeggios and patterns, whatever, and play it really slowly with the computer to hear if I was off or in tune. But then, I think the most important thing is if you want to play in tune, it has to be at the top of your list of priorities. Some guys want to play fast, some guys want to play the right notes, some guys, we all have a list of priorities when you perform, or if you want to play in tune, put it at your top priority so your focus will be on that. So you play less notes, and then you focus on the beauty of the note. Of course, because as a band leader, I have the last word.
Okay.
Because any music can go in different direction, and then it could be good. All directions could be equally acceptable and good, So that's the role of the band leader. But on the other hand, if you have George Whitty on keyboards, and I would be the band leader, I would listen to what George has to say, because he might bring an input or a different vision than mine, which would be surprising and then would be better than my ideas. This is the role of the band leader to, listen to the suggestions of the band, the musicians in the band, and especially with this type of musician like Dave Weckl or Manuel. When someone says something, you listen as a band leader. This is what I would do. This is what I do in my band. Mm-hmm. I always ask the guys, "Are you comfortable with that?" And sometimes the guys would bring an idea. I said, "Well, I think it would be better if you go." This is the role of the band leader, sometimes to draw a line and say, "We'll go in there." Most of the time, it's not a problem. I had a few issues sometimes that the guys would say, "Oh, I would prefer to do that." I said, "Sorry, guys, we're going to go in this direction." I never had any big argument, though. Never. Well, I'm trying to play it every day. But for the past 10, 15 years maybe, I take breaks where I don't play music at all. And it's good in a way because it refreshes my perception of music. And then I played so much and I practiced so much down sometimes, not physically, it's just mentally to have a break. But the bad side is it takes time to get to be back in shape. If I take a break, a 1 week off, it'll take more than a week to get back in shape. Not necessarily only the fingers, but the connection of the brain, the speed of your reaction, especially to improvise. Because improvisation, you have to create on the moment. You have to be there in control, hear things, and then the little hamster has to go fast in your head. So that's the downside. But normally I play every day. Sometimes I focus a little bit more on the fretless bass. Sometimes I focus a bit more on the fretted bass. Not necessarily playing both every day. When I was playing upright bass, I would try to practice the 3 instruments, which is very, very hard. Very hard. I found it very difficult. It's always been the hardest part for me to play upright bass and electric bass. Because the sound, the muscles, and especially the right hand, the left hand position, it's not that bad, although it's very different. But it's not that hard because, as I told you before, I focus on hearing the tuning before I play the bass. So the right hand is a big difference for me because when you pluck the strings on the electric bass, it's not as hard. It's a different part of the finger too. So I stopped playing upright bass for a few years because it was very difficult to travel with the instrument. And then I didn't want to borrow any upright bass and play the upright bass of someone else's upright bass. So I stopped playing upright bass for a while. And I came back to upright bass with a 5-string bass with a high C. And then if I want to do a gig on upright bass, I'll focus on the upright bass for some time before the gig to get the sound back. But even still today, personally, I find it very hard to go from electric, fretless or fretted to upright bass. I get a better sound when I focus on upright bass. And then when I got a good sound on upright bass, I kill the electric bass because I play too hard. This is my personal feeling about it. I hear some guys that can go from one to another, and they sound beautiful. So, probably different for everybody. Yeah, I did a recording. I was invited to record with the WDR big band in Germany. I already had charts with 5 horns. And then when they called me to do these series of concerts and recording, they offered me to, they said, well, if you want to do the arrangements, we'll let you do it. But then I figured that it's a big challenge to perform, write the charts, and I'm not considering myself being a great arranger for big band because it's a very complex job. I mean, to really get the maximum sound of the register of the instruments, and then how to split it and all that. So they offered me, they said, the great arranger Michael Albani would be in to do it. I said, great, go for it. So I sent my arrangement, my 5-horn arrangement, or my combo arrangement to Michael. And then he fixed it all up. And then he came up some good ideas, and then not too far from my arrangements, but you know, the band sounded beautiful, and especially he knew how to direct the band. Because the WD Big Band, it's a band that plays, the guys play always together. So it's a big bus to run, to drive, you know. So he did it beautifully because that's his job. He mastered how to conduct a big orchestra. That's it. And then we were supposed to release this recording right after we did the gig. And then I was not too happy with the mixes. So I offered them to send me the tape, and then I'll mix it in my studio, and that never happened. That was my mistake because the record has never been released, and it's a shame. I'm very sad about it because it's a great recording, it's a great performance. I'll keep working on it. I'll keep bugging them.
Okay, we have to listen as soon as possible.
Oh, but on the other hand, I'm doing gigs now. I'm back doing gigs in Canada with a 5-horn section. I'm back on stage with the 5 horns, and I'll be recording it at the end of August. So that will be, it's not going to be a record, but it's going to be available on YouTube. We don't sell music anymore, so I'd rather give it for free, and that'll be it. I think so. I play different on the upright bass. Some things are harder to play on the upright bass. A few upright bass players really were able to do amazing things, like and Neil Peterson. Neil Peterson was incredible. His technique was fantastic. Renaud Garcia-Fonce also is an amazing technician. When I play the upright bass, I play some of the language that I use on electric bass. But the long arpeggios that I'm able to play on a 6-string bass, very hard to do. The high register, I practice a lot of the higher the tongue position, but still, it's there's some things that I'm not doing on the upright bass that I can do on electric bass. And also, the instrument needs a bit more. It's a little bit more physical. You have to dig into a lot more to get the sound of this big thing, and then it slows down a little bit. So I focus more. For some reason, I focus more on the time, and then playing the right notes and getting the band together, you know, than what I do on electric bass. Electric bass, I get a little bit more crazy, I would say. I think I might be a better bass player when I play upright bass. I don't know. There's a difference. The attitude is different. Well, it started before I met George Filonetto. My basic idea was to have a different sound than Jaco, because Jaco's sound was so big, strong, and then every fretless player on the planet wanted to sound like Jaco. I said, for me it'll be a mistake, because I don't want to be Jaco. He was so good, so strong, so tempted to copy him. So I decided to go for a darker sound. First of all, a fingerboard with no epoxy, so less high end, each note he plays Jacko this big high end. And there's a little scoop, there's a mid-range in Jacko's sound. So I started, working on different pickups with George, different woods, different shapes, different things. And I didn't want to use, most of the time, no EQ. I'd rather have the sound of the bass directly from the choice of wood, strings, and pickup placement on the instrument. So we did many experiments, trying different things and stuff. And at some point, boom, we got it. I told George, this is the sound I was looking for. So normally, the fretless I have no preamp. It's a direct sound from the instrument. The tone is all the way up, and the strings I use labella strings, the super step strings that I've been using and designed with Richard Coco at labella, like 35 years ago. So this is basically the history of the sound that I have. Some people say, "Oh, your sound is a little nasal." Well, I don't find it. I like the sound I have, and for one thing, for sure, you like it or not, but it sounds like me. It's very important to find a voice at some point. Jacko had a great voice. You can recognize Jacko's sound right away. So hopefully people can recognize me just by my sound and the language I use also. But I think the sound is an important aspect of your personality. It's a long process. I go back like 40 years ago, 45 years ago. I was playing a Fender bass. And then I had an Ampeg. At some point I had also a different amplifier. 215 and tube amplifier. I had a good sound at home. And then I had my first studio recording offer. So I went with my bass. I didn't know. I've never worked in studio before. So the sound engineer said, okay, here's a DI. You plug your bass into it, and then we'll give you headphones. Okay. Plug it in. I was shocked. I said, wow, this is not my sound. What did you do? He said, no. This is the sound you're sending me. This is the sound of your bass. I was shocked. I said, wow, the amplifier is part of my sound. And that amplifier is changing my sound, is altering my sound, is coloring my sound. I said, well, I will need then to always bring my amplifier and mic the amplifier. So I started studying about it, and I started asking questions to the engineer. What did you do? What is the EQ? Starting listening to the frequencies and all that. The choice of preamp. I'm not an engineer, but I understand how it works. I have a studio. So at some point I said, okay, I need to fix the sound of my bass in order to be able to record it anywhere, and then I'm sure people will hear my sound, even into the PA. You play live, you plug your bass, you send your amp on stage, you have a great sound, and then you use a DI, and then people hear a different sound in the audience than you hear on stage. I said, I need to fix it. So I've been looking for an amplifier that's not coloring my sound, just amplify the sound. A flat response, it's like a mirror that is perfect. If you look in the mirror, if you don't like what you see, it's not the mirror the problem, it's what you put in the mirror. If the mirror is correct, it's perfect. So this is my stupid comparison. But that I've always been looking and searching for an amplifier that is flat. That's the reason why I made the suggestion to Marco, why don't we add a little 15 to have a full frequency response? Because people say, yeah, but the bass is low. Of course, you know, the fundamental is like, you know, 30 hertz or 27 hertz or whatever, the fundamental. But each note you play, there you have harmonics. And then I want to hear these harmonics, you know, especially when you play fretted bass. This attack could be 8,000 hertz, could be 7,000 hertz or whatever. So that tweeter, and then if you have a 12 or 15 inches, there's a big hole in the middle. Some, like the 10-inch speaker can reproduce that, but I like the sound of a 12, especially the Mark Bass 12-inch speaker. They sound warm and very close to the sound I'm hearing. So I made a suggestion to add a 5, and Marco said, yeah, it's not a bad idea. And then we tried it, and then for me it's the best amp you can play, the K1, and now we're working on another model with the new Mark Bass configuration and material, and then I can't wait to hear it. Well, this is hard to answer. It's very hard to answer because, you know, I teach now full-time at the Montreal University. I teach bachelor, I teach masters, and we have also a doctorate. It's very, very different for every musician. You have to be very, very dedicated and then have a long-term vision. Then be prepared. Not only be a good musician, but you know, the musician's life also is not necessarily for everybody. Some people will discover that during the process of becoming a professional musician. And advice, it's very hard to give a specific advice. Be patient, work hard, study, play as much as you can, and then you will discover who you are, and then if this life is made for you, because it's not an easy life, you know, to get to a point where you can make a living, a decent living, and then get good gigs and stuff. Most of the time you have to go through the shed and then pay your dues, and then it depends how long you're willing to do that. All these things has to be, you have to be conscious of the steps before being, and then if you have the consistency and then the desire of doing it and going through it, you will succeed. So just have a long-term vision and focus on it and go for it. And until you ask yourself, is it made for me? If that question pops in your head, stop and think about it, because this is very important. You don't want to ruin the rest of your life. Ask yourself, it's a long trip, I'm willing to go for it because my desire, my dream is bigger than that. Then you will succeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.